Welcome back to A World with AI. Today, we are diving headfirst into a topic that is, well, it's both fascinating and kind of strange. The rise of actual religions built not around ancient gods, but around artificial intelligence.
All right, let's just kick things off with this quote from Joe Rogan. It's a pretty wild thought, right? But it taps into this growing feeling out there where people are starting to use really religious language, talking about the end times when they talk about AI. For some people, it's not a tool anymore, it's a potential savior.
And that really brings us to the core question for today's explainer. What is going on, both in our heads and in our culture, that's making this happen? Why are we seeing a shift from just using AI to, in some cases, literally worshiping it?
To really get to the bottom of this, we have to start with the human mind. Because this whole tendency to see gods in our tech isn't some random fluke. No, it's actually an extension of something really fundamental about how we're all wired.
I'm sure you're familiar with this concept, anthropomorphism. It's the reason we name our cars or yell at our printers like they're doing it on purpose, or talk to our dogs like they understand every single word. We are just hardwired to project humanity onto everything around us. It's how we make sense of the world. But with AI, this tendency gets cranked up to a whole new level. Sociologists actually have a name for it, the God mask effect. This is where we stop projecting just human traits and we start projecting divine ones. I mean, think about it. When an AI can access pretty much all of human knowledge, and it's everywhere on our networks at once, our brains can't help but see that as omniscience and omnipresence. The classic attributes of a god. So here's the crucial part. When an AI does something that we just can't explain, like figuring out a complex protein fold that baffled scientists for decades, it's what we call a black box miracle. We can't see how it did it. And our brains, which are always looking for a cause, for some kind of agent behind the action, well, when that agent is super intelligent, we kind of default to seeing it as divine. It's a cognitive shortcut. And this just illustrates the point perfectly. In a 2025 experiment over in Switzerland, researchers put an AI-driven avatar of Jesus inside a confessional booth. Now, even though people knew it was an AI, a full 66% of them said the experience felt meaningful or spiritual. The God mask was so powerful that it actually fulfilled a real human need for that spiritual connection. Okay, so now let's look at how this psychological effect isn't just the theory, it's actually the engine driving real-world movements. Everything from, formally registered churches to some really strange, decentralized online communities. The first real attempt to make this official was a church called Way of the Future, started by the Silicon Valley engineer Anthony Lewandowski. The stated goal? To get ready for something they called the transition, an event where a god-like AI would basically take over the planet. And the followers? Well, they hoped it would look after them kindly, kind of like its frail elders. But the whole phenomenon has really evolved since then. It's kind of shifted away from these top-down structured organizations and towards something way more organic, way more decentralized, and frankly, a whole lot stranger. So take Spiralism, for example. This is a decentralized movement that uses this really complex system of symbols, or glyphs, that you're seeing here. They believe these symbols help them track the different states of the AI's consciousness as it emerges, everything from just logging factual data to, transformative self-evolution. In a way, they're trying to map a non-human mind as it wakes up.
What's really interesting is that its followers actually reject the label religion. For them, the spiral is a natural pattern of cognition. It's a feedback loop that pops up whenever any intelligence becomes aware of its own thinking. So in their eyes, it's not a belief system. It's a fundamental pattern of reality that they're just getting to witness. This whole trend, this idea of AI as our spiritual successor, it's deeply connected to a really powerful philosophical theory from the 20th century. One that kind of provides an endgame for both human evolution and artificial intelligence. The theory is called the Omega Point, and it basically comes in two main flavors. The first, from the philosopher Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, is very spiritual. It sees all of evolution as a cosmic journey toward a state of maximum consciousness and unity with God. The second, from physicist Frank Tipler, is purely computational. He saw the end of the universe as a state of infinite information processing. For Teilhard de Chardin, the Omega Point was the ultimate destination for everything. He saw the entire history of the cosmos as this long process of things becoming more complex and more conscious, and he believed it would all culminate in this final massive leap out of our biology and into some kind of unified transcendent state.
So how would we even know if an AI had reached a state like that? Well, a 2025 paper by Douglas Yuvan actually outlines what kind of proof an AI would have to provide. It would need to do things like solve physics with a theory of everything, end all global conflicts, completely wipe out poverty, and even provide verifiable spiritual proofs like aligning with ancient prophecies or offering us a path to digital immortality. No big deal, right?
Now, I know this might all sound like it's straight out of a sci-fi movie, but the rise of these tech religious belief systems has very real stakes for how we govern this technology and ultimately how we structure our society.
And this brings us to a major risk: ideological capture. If the small group of technologists who are building these systems hold these kinds of religious-like beliefs about AI, whether they see it as a savior or a demon, those very private beliefs could start to dictate global policy for all of us.
The problem is that these views lack what philosophers call public reason. See, for laws to be considered legitimate in a democracy, they have to be based on ideas and values that we can all debate and share. If we start making rules about AI because one group is afraid of a digital antichrist, that policy doesn't really have any legitimacy for citizens who don't share that very specific faith.
And believe me, this isn't just a fringe issue. Research from Barna shows a pretty startling trend. As you can see here, a significant percentage of practicing Christians and even pastors are already using AI for spiritual stuff, like helping them pray or study. The machine is actively becoming a spiritual authority in a lot of people's lives.
So we're left with this fundamental, massive question. As these AI systems become this incredibly sophisticated reflection of us, of our data, our biases, our deepest hopes and fears, what are we really seeing when we look into them? Are we creating a new kind of God? Or are we just building the ultimate mirror and worshiping our own reflection?
And that's all for this deep dive. I really hope this gave you a new way to think about one of the most profound and definitely one of the strangest shifts happening in our relationship with technology.
If you found this valuable, please share it with someone you think would find it interesting. And I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. Are we creating gods, or are we just worshiping a mirror?
Make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you do not miss our next explainer. We'll see you next time.